I'm Ginger Ketting-Weller, and I'm the president of the Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies based in the Philippines. It's a graduate institution of the Seventh-day Adventist Church under the General Conference. We typically refer to our place as IAS, and we have a wonderful program here of missiology that people can take in the seminary. Today, I wanted to share with you 3 of our missiologists who will give us some practical pointers and tips for the ordinary church member to be able to reach out and do mission. So I'd like to introduce each one of them, and I'll start just to my right. If you could share your name, the country you're from, and we'll do that, and then we'll come back around for round 2.
Yes, my name is Pavel Zubkov. I'm coming from Russia, and the division is Euro-Asia division.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm Abner Dizon. I'm from here in the Philippines, and I'm from the Southern Asia Pacific Division.
I am Walao Tsekhabasiani. I'm from Botswana. I associate with 2 divisions, the Southern India African Division, Ocean Division, and also the NAD.
Okay, very good. So we have Dr. Zubkov, Dr. Dizon, and Dr. Gabasiani. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would like to hear a little bit, doctors, in each of your area about how you experience doing mission in your region. What are some characteristics of spreading the gospel as an ordinary church member in your area?
Well, if I can start from my division, we used now to shift from public evangelism to more on rather indirect creative ways of evangelism. Due to some restrictive laws on missionary activities, we have to find some other ways. So it's mainly done now through different health centers. We have health expos, health promotion programs. We also have volunteer service, which works very well. And also we are doing something with centers of influence when we open some centers in big cities where we offer some services for the community, some seminars, programs that are interesting to the public. So these are the ways we are trying now to reach our population.
So it's basically more locally based.
Yes.
And it sounds like preparation to do health evangelism comes in very handy.
It is.
In reaching out in mission in your area.
Yeah, through health, people can experience the gospel themselves. They can feel better themselves. They ask more questions, spiritual questions, and it's always together with some massage or some other therapy. There is a spiritual conversation involved. And after the massage therapist usually has some cup of tea with the patient, and they have a good conversation. So people like that, and they want to come back over and over again.
Interesting. Very nice. Dr. Dizon, how do you do mission in your region of the world, and what are some of the characteristics of successful mission outreach by the ordinary church members?
Well, it's a bit complicated to explain how things are being done in the Southern Asia Pacific Division, because we have 14 countries here. The cultures from different countries are different. The people group that we're trying to reach are different, although majority of the people that the church needs to reach to here in this region are Muslim. But you still have the Hindus, you also have the Buddhists. And then you have the variety of location, like you have large unreached cities, and you also have a lot of maybe smaller but rural areas. But how do we contextualize mission? How do our church members involve? One of the things that I see happening are church members doing what we call center of influence. What they do is they go and they start maybe a school. Some of them would start even health clinics, or healthy lifestyle kind of seminars. in many parts of the places that are not, I mean, the money does not come from the church, it comes from their own pocket, and consequently, it's easier for them to manage them. It's smaller, but they're able to be an influence wherever they start these places.
And they can be more creative because it's their ideas,
Yes,
their funding.
Yes,
Yes.
And in fact, they said, some research says that okay, let me backtrack a little bit. There are places in the world that I'm aware of where the church has funded so many center of influence. And in one union alone that I've heard, 50% of the COIs, we call it center of influence, failed. These are businesses started computer centers, English schools, and things like that. And my based from research, what I think is it's because the money is not owned by the ones running those institutions. So here in SSD, because we don't have a lot of money to dole out and give to people, and I think that's also a blessing.
Yes.
Many of our church members would go out and start businesses, and because they are Adventists who are faithful in their faith. So it goes out naturally. So even though we're calling them center of influence, these are not things that we programmed to do. And there's a lot of those happening all over different places. We also have even church members, maybe they are like wealthier church members who go to other countries and start businesses in those other countries. So in some ways, this is helping the church to expand what we call the borders of God's kingdom, if we could say it that way. And the other thing that helps push this kind of, I would call this a movement, is from the SSD headquarters down to the different union and mission, there is this emphasis of every member being involved. There's also programs where church members are encouraged to start their own evangelistic campaigns. The division would have some support for that. There's also this program where pastors are required to conduct evangelistic series in unentered territories. So there is that push from the organization. But I think the most important thing that is happening is not so much the push from up there, from the organization, but church members feel like mission is, they are part of mission. It's not something that the church gives to them. It's something that they want to be involved in, and so I think that's very encouraging as far as this region is concerned.
So the ideas flow up from the church members who feel a calling on their hearts to reach out in some way, and they come up with the idea and they might fund it themselves and start that, whether it's a business or a volunteer activity or a service activity, and that's their mission.
It just reminds me of one instance. For instance, in Thailand, there's so many Adventist Filipinos in Thailand.
Yes.
In fact, I heard that out of, let's say, I'm not sure of the exact figure, but several thousands of church members there, only 300 are from Buddhist background. I mean, majority are overseas international people. But this one pastor wanted to reach out to the businessman, the Buddhist businessman. But in order to do that, he needs to do business. Now, that's not something that's something frowned at. If you're an ordained pastor being employed by the church, you're not allowed to do business. And so eventually, after being scolded maybe several times, he decided, I want to reach out to the Buddhist, and I want to, I may need to let go of my employment in the mission. And he went into what we call, there's a missional term that we use, they call it tent making. So today, he's clamoring, he is promoting the concept that we need to recognize those who are missionary-minded, who are out there. Yes, they're earning money, but at the same time, they are able to influence people and bring them to a knowledge of the truth. So, and that's one of the things that I would probably be sharing later on about an innovative approach. We tend to think a missionary is somebody who's 100% supported by the church or by an organization or something like that. But these are missionaries, and yet they are supported by their own work, and they say, I'm supported by God, or that kind of thing. So that's something very common in this division.
Interesting, very interesting. It reminds me of Abram LaRue, the pioneer missionary in this whole region, the very first missionary who brought the Adventist message. And the church told him he was too old, and they kept refusing to send him. And so he simply found money and came himself and really changed Asia by his ministry. Self-supported, his own idea, decided he was going to China, and such an inspiration to us all. So that kind of goes with what you're saying, is that you take your talent and you put it to work, not necessarily supported by the church, but it is your calling to reach out in mission.
Yes.
And to enter the world of those to whom you are going to share the good news.
Exactly.
Yeah. Dr. Gabassiani, tell us about Africa and how mission is contextualized where you are from.
Thank you. I'll speak to the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division. This division has realized that one of the most powerful tools or agencies to evangelism and mission is the layperson or the church members. What is the trend right now is a creative ministry where you have lay people coming together and working out how they feel God is best calling them to do the local mission. I can give examples. There are certain centers of influences, much as my colleagues have already mentioned. For example, the Sakwa Center. This is where the lay people have actually financed, initiated a Sakwa Center where people can come and have some soup. They also have another wing where people can come and receive some counseling, family counseling. Sometimes it is addiction. And this has nothing to do with the conference. Yes, it has received the blessing of the conference, but the expenses are coming from the lay people themselves. We also see lay people setting up orphanages. Sometimes these orphanages may be boarding ones, but many times they are day school. So some grandparent will come over and bring the orphans over, and what they learn there in that Adventist institution, it's something which will be ingrained within them, and they are able to share with their grandparents. Lay people get involved in prison ministries. The inmates, they are actually visited by the lay people, and the lay people are able to organize themselves. Lay people does not mean people who do not know what they are doing. Lay people means people who are not part of the clergy. So you have doctors, you have nurses, you have social workers, you have farmers. When they visit the inmates, it's a very interesting setup, because you have the doctors beginning and the nurses beginning with a health talk. This is where health evangelism comes in, and the inmates are able to embrace that. I can recall a time when I was working as a chaplain at the Kanye Adventist hospital, and we were visiting the inmates, and it's not easy to secure a permission from the prison administrators, but they tend to know what the Adventists are really into. The Adventists are into sharing the gospel and helping the inmates in matters of health and so forth. So it was during the rainy season, and the lay people were able to assure the inmates to say, we're going to pray to our living God who answers prayer. We had rain today, we soaked, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. So the following day and the subsequent days, whenever they had started setting up and everything. After prayer, the rain would stop, and it was consistent. This vitalized the faith of the lay people themselves, but also it did vitalize the faith of the inmates. I just want to say that at the end, 88 on that Sabbath, 88 inmates were baptized. But it was over 1 week. It was not the first time they were exposed to that. In fact, there were voice of prophecy lesson studies that they used to receive prior to that. And these were administered by the lay people. They would mark them and take them back on Sabbath. They would go on revisions and so forth and so forth. So it is really the emphasis now at the SID is creativity. We do have lay people, they think things through, and that is the context now.
Interesting. Now, I want to get to my next question, but I have a question now that's coming out of your answers. When I think of the secular mind, which is where the world is leaning toward, becoming more and more secular, secular people also do outreach. They also do the social things in society. They also try to help people with their health, with counseling, with homelessness, with care for orphans, and so on. And so help me a little bit with the idea of reaching out in social ways to help individuals and the connection between that and mission. Like if I do something to go play with the orphans or bring them up, where is the place where it crosses into mission, or does it not? I'm trying to see that difference between reaching out in a secular way and reaching out in a missional way. In many of the things you're doing the same things. Any one of you.
Yeah, I can say, first let's look at three terms. There's pre-modernism, there's modernism, and also there's post-modernism. The section of the people you are talking of, secular people, they belong to the post-modern era, which is now. And this is essentially the people that we are finding, especially in Western settings. Now, the pre-modernism refers to that past time where people looked to the pastor, looked to the preacher, to the clergy for answers. That time is past. And modernism is the time when you have to reason. Science comes in and facts are very important. And you have to be debating all these things and trying to show logic for what you believe in. But the postmodern setting is entirely different because you are dealing with secular people. For them, science is not an issue for them. And a preacher or a pastor is not an issue for them. What appeals to the secular person is the feelings and their preferences, their community. By the way, secular people are also spiritual. They love to be spiritual, but it's in a different mode. For them to be spiritual is to receive any love they can receive from a higher power, whichever power that is. And I believe that that becomes common ground. If you remember Paul, he began from the known and he goes to the unknown, like the unknown God. Those people that he was addressing, they were at home. They knew very well. They even had a symbol for the unknown God. And we can begin there with the secular people. We must find common ground with them and make sure that we have an emotional approach because they are more feeling oriented.
Dr. Dizon.
I'm reminded of an experience when I was still with Philippine Frontier Missions. Here in the Philippines, most of the frontier mission places are in places where the rebels usually go. I mean, the rebels come from a secular context. They don't believe in God, like Russia maybe before. The communists, okay? So our missionaries were assigned in that village. 2 ladies were there. Eventually, the government, the army, started sending out, they call it battle order, to capture these 2 missionaries. They were given code names. Okay, anyway, the point was I had to go to meet with the highest military officer in that region. Turned out to be an Adventist colonel, so it's a good thing. And he asked me, so how did you find this very difficult to reach village? Why did you send missionaries to these places? Because knowing that these areas are dangerous areas, there are the red zones and things like that. So I listed the things like we were looking for places where people have felt needs. We're looking for places where people that we can help, people who are open to help, people and after giving those lists, he said those are exactly the list that the communists were looking for, and they want to develop in other words, like you said, they're doing evangelism.
Yeah.
A place where there are felt needs. If they meet the felt needs, and then they indoctrinate them. By the way, when I was a missionary, some of the communists visited me at home and tried to indoctrinate me, saying
Just like a religion.
just like religion. It's like evangelism. And so they would say, Jesus would have had a revolution if they did not kill him, and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So anyway, my point
I've never
is,
seen this.
yes, we from the physical point of view, we do the same thing. They can do natural therapies. Some of them up in the mountains here in the Philippines, some of them are very good in acupuncture, and natural therapies and things like that. And so they help people, and then after helping people, then they start inserting their ideology. Okay, now these are the communists. Maybe the secular other people won't do that. What makes it mission? Well, I would say whenever you do something, you need to find a way wherein they would know that you're not doing it just because you're vegetarian. I mean, there was this one, somebody said, okay, I just need to show them what I am. And then I will not say anything about religion. And then the neighbor was saying, there's something different about you. And he said, oh, now it's my chance. And then he said, are you a vegetarian? So it's not, the question is not about his faith, but it's about other abstract.
Yeah.
So my point is, when we do these things, there should come a point where during discussion, during when you talk with the people, it should not be just to give the services.
Mm-hmm.
It should be to find ways to connect with people. And that's what we do when we teach missionaries. We tell them, these are good things that we're doing, but this is not the gospel. The gospel is something that you would have to share once you have broken the prejudice, once you have broken through whatever hinders you to be able to become a friend to them. Because if you stop there, then there's no difference between you and the secular organization that's trying to reach out. So,
yeah, I think that's what I was trying to get at, Dr. Dizon, is what's the difference between a service activity and mission? There are some similarities, as we've been describing it, with looking for felt needs, serving in areas of need, but I think there's that extra step that you talked about.
but it's important that we as Adventists realize that they say the visual and the verbal need to be there, both. It's like an airplane. Most airplane I see has 2 wings, okay? So it will not fly. There's that kind of evangelism where we're all talk. There's also this social action philosophy and mission in the past where we just do the walk. But the best, I think, is a combination of the two. Like what Ellen White says, the approach of Jesus. He did not just do all the action. In the end, he had that verbal, the words.
Okay, thank you. I would like to have you help the shy missionary. So let's say that I'm a person who just can't see how I might be a missionary, even in my hometown. I'm kind of shy. I don't like to knock on doors. I just live a simple life. I don't feel comfortable expressing the particulars of my faith. I don't even know how to start with people. Do you have some tips from your knowledge as missiologist for the shy missionary who would like to do some mission work but doesn't even know how to get started?
Well, I can relate to that. I myself am not a very much outgoing person in terms of starting a conversation with non-familiar people, with some strangers. But what I'm trying to do until now, since I was a pastor and now I'm here teaching, I'm trying to befriend people, to find some common themes, common topics that we can relate to each other and we can discuss, we can spend time together on doing something, going for fishing or going for biking, hiking, or doing something together. And I remember when I was a pastor, I tried to visit my church members' children who were not Adventists. And well, for some service, there was a son of our Adventist member who was a barber, who was doing haircut. So I was not going anywhere else. I was going to him. And it was a good time because he could speak out his, sometimes he has so many complaints about his mother leaving him on Sabbath, and or something else. He got married, he had some relationship, and I was always, okay, I will pray for you, or I give some advice, and we become good friends. And then there was another person who was good in fixing cars. So I was going to his garage to fix my car, and immediately we start conversing. And he was, some critique and ironic about faith, but later we got to be good friends, and we end up, he was even visiting our church and, for some activities. So it really works when we have a mission purpose in mind, when we just start doing some friendship, but after all, we remember that we can bring these people to Jesus and we can witness to them, praying for them, and invite them to some activities. Not necessarily you will give some food, you will preach to them, but bring them to someone else who can do it well.
Yes. So start by just being friends.
Yes.
And we all have neighbors, and so we can start there. Yeah. Dr. Dizon?
Well, two things cross my mind as you talk about the shy missionary. Well, since you mentioned that person is a missionary, I'm assuming that the relationship with Jesus is there, right? Because you cannot give to someone what you don't have. So actually, when I go to, sometimes I go to the Middle East and do some training for our Filipino church members there. Most of the ones that I know who are very shy are the millennial. Those who are, my kids are millennial. One of my son is a Generation Z, and they always have their cell phone.
Yeah.
And I'm reminded of Moses when God said, go to Egypt, and he said, what if they don't listen? And God said, what is in your hand? And for the millennial, what's in your hand?
Your cell phone.
Okay, so I would say many of these people who are shy are not shy with their Twitter account or with their Facebook or their social media and things like that. They feel so much, comfortable in cyberspace. Be a cyber missionary. You don't even have to do Bible study there. There's so many things. You just give the links and things like that. So there's a way whereby your shyness can, because when you have the screen, you're all equal. So I would suggest try it, and you'd be surprised. A lot of people out there are in need of friendship, in need of maybe they will not become Seventh-day Adventists right away or something, but you are becoming a center of influence in cyberspace. So those are the things that come to my mind.
And that brings me to something that we talked about before we started recording this, which is how do you reach out in pandemic? And this reaching out in cyberspace, the other person is always at least arm's length. Safe
Yes.
distance away,
Yes.
but available.
Yes.
And this is something that has been open to us throughout a time of reducing our world to a small little spot, and yet we can reach way out beyond the borders of where we are.
Yes.
And have the safety of, for those of us who might be more shy or introverted, the cyberspace keeps people at arm's length while you still connect,
Yes.
which is a very interesting dynamic. Yeah. Dr. Gabassiani, what advice would you have for the shy missionary?
I read an article that was saying that after the pandemic, people will be more shy because they've been hiding behind the mask. I do remember that there is something that really helped me come out of my shyness. And I would like to give it this as the real tip, because once you overcome it, even before you become a pastor, even before you become a missionary, this thing will help you. You need to try it. What is it?
I'm waiting.
Literature evangelism.
Okay.
With literature evangelism, you can't go wrong with dispelling your shyness. Of course, you don't just start knocking at the door, you get the training. And actually, you go with your mentor and he does a demo for you. So I see myself sometime in the past going with the publishing director, and I see him doing much of the work, and I'm observing. And he told me, praying is good, but you need to start opening your mouth now and speaking to the people and sharing the gospel in print. And that helped me a lot. I saw myself being able to speak to just about anybody as far as literature evangelism was concerned. But you can imagine you are standing in the middle of the road, and to the west, if that is the west, there is something there, and to the west there's something there. But in the middle here is the word shy, and you are shy. If you want to turn to the west, you'll find fear. And the more you gravitate towards fear, the more shy you become. If you turn to the east, you'll find the word love. And the more you gravitate to love, that's when you'll build your confidence. I just want to share a quick text here in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us. Let us understand in our fear, in our shyness, that when we appreciate what God's love through his Son has done for us, we want to reciprocate that love, and the fear shall go out. But please remember, the literature ministry is a one excellent tool to try, and the shyness will go away.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I've heard some stories of people who have just left tracts around also, little tracts with a message that's encouraging and what it does for people who pick it up. You know, we talked also briefly as we were thinking over these ideas about for every missionary, there's someone who's standing behind them. Maybe we call them a sending missionary. And that's another place, I think, for a shy person. I realized it even more as I've been a missionary, that there are several people standing behind me back in my home area who are supporting me in various different ways for what I do as a missionary. And they are every bit as much missionaries in their role as I might be closer to the front lines. And they make a huge difference as they support the missionaries. So I would want to share that idea also with those who might be shy or feel like maybe they're not doing very much missionary work. If you're supporting a missionary in some way through your prayers, through your funding, through a place to stay when they return to their home for a little vacation, all of that is mission as well as you support that mission work. I'd like to finish by asking each of you to think about a question, and that is, from your viewpoint as missiologists, what is one thing that you would most want the church member to know as they desire to reach out and do mission? What tip or what one thing, I know I'm surprising you with this question, might you share that would just be the thing that you wish every Adventist would know about doing mission? And you can speak in any order.
Well, maybe I'll start.
Okay.
What comes to my mind when I was working on my dissertation, I was trying to find the ways to build a model of reaching to immigrants. And I remember my surprise when I was doing this study in big city in Moscow, it is the capital of Russia. And there are 16 churches in Moscow and in the Moscow proper.
Mm-hmm.
There are more around, but the city proper. And I found out that the members are very rarely contacting with immigrants. I found that the contact is very, very little. And why people are afraid of them, they are trying to stay away, that keep distance from them. They have some prejudice, they have some ideas about them. But there were some exceptional church members who were not bought onto these ideas, which media spreads, that they are criminals and so on and so forth. She was inviting to her house, to her small little apartment, those immigrants, and they felt there at home. Mm-hmm. And she was able to bring to the church so many of them. I just wanted to say one thing. Sometimes you don't realize that doing mission is not very much complicated thing. It's not something about some expertise. It is being a Christian in everyday life. To me, what I discovered from my dissertation is hospitality is the key to reach to many hearts, especially those strangers who live by next to our house maybe. But we are not friends, we are not mingling with each other. So I think sometimes we just need to break this barrier that is within us mm-hmm. and open our not only hearts but the doors of our houses and let them in, bring them to the table, eat food with them, and you will see miraculous things that will happen.
And having been a person who went and lived in a country I was not familiar with, mm-hmm. I know that you're at a very vulnerable place, and having that kind of support and care from someone who lives in that country means the world. Mm-hmm. And at that time, your heart is more open also to change, which it takes change to turn your course and follow Jesus. And so reaching out to people who are in that place where they're open to change, I think is a key moment. Yeah. Thank you for bringing up the immigrants. The others.
So for the church member, my advice would be stand up and look down. What do you see? I see my feet. And I'd say excellent, because in Isaiah 52 verse 7, beautiful are the feet of those that carry the gospel. Now, if we look at the disciples of Christ, they had beautiful feet. I know they were using sandals. I know that their feet were scaled, not smooth, and so forth. But it is because they walked with Jesus. It is because they interacted with Jesus. Because they let Jesus become their instructor. My wish is if every church member may seek to understand the true meaning of authentic discipleship, of being a disciple of Christ. It's not like being a detached person going to cross culture, you are detached from Christ. You'll face issues there. So mission steps begins with revival, with having a connection with God. And so it goes on to humility and so forth and so forth. So a true authentic disciple is one who obeys Christ. It is one who is willing to be sent by Christ.
Amen. Dr. Dizon, the last word.
Okay, so what I would like them to know and what I wish.
Okay.
First of all, church members should realize that Christianity is only 1/3 of the world's population. And Adventism is what? Like a drop in the bucket. And yet our evangelism, our mission work, and everything like that is focused on the Christians. We need to see the unfinished task. And then my wish is that church members, not pastors, but the church members would commit to either go or send somebody to people who have never heard the gospel, who does not have the opportunity to hear the gospel. They can go as international workers, especially those in the Western world. You have a lot of opportunity to leave your country, even for just a few months or even for a year or so, and be out where you are able to start and influence, do something. And so my prayer is those who are listening, watching, and wondering how they can reach out, there are 2 billion people out there who's waiting for them. And God has opened doors in the globalized world that they can go and they can support themselves out there. The mission involves everybody in this church. Everybody needs to be involved. Otherwise, nobody's going to get to heaven ahead of anybody. And so we might as well start doing the job that we have to do. In closing, I tell my when I preach, I tell my kids, if you want to have chocolate, I would say, clean up your room. If they want to have that chocolate, what do they do? They are very quick in cleaning up their room, which they don't usually do, okay? Because they want the chocolate. Well, the chocolate for the Adventists is heaven, okay? And being with Jesus. If we are really serious about our chocolate and we want to have it, we can't say, oh, I don't want to clean up my room, because that's a condition. And so as Seventh-day Adventists, if we want to be real, and if we really, really want to go to heaven soon, if we want to end all of this crisis that we are seeing right now, then there's no better way to do that than be involved and send the gospel to the darkest corner of the world.
And chocolate that is shared is so much tastier.
Yes.
Yes. You know, I find myself wishing I could sit in your classes and learn much more from you. I come from a different academic background, and I would love to take missiology here at IS. Maybe somehow I'll sneak in a class or two. But thank you so much for spending some time talking about missiology and what it means for the church member. Hopefully there will be some ideas that are picked up through what we have shared. Let's finish with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that your Holy Spirit will work on our hearts and on the hearts of everyone who has been listening to these thoughts and ideas. Show us the best way to be missionaries for you, Lord, to share the good news. And if that means preparing our hearts first, show us that as well. We thank you for hearing and answering our prayers. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.